Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Reckoning of Roku chapter analysis video. This one's going to be for chapter 4, which is called A Way Through. Just before we start, I'll mention that I do have YouTube channel membership enabled on the channel if you would like to help support the channel, so I can do series like this when a new novel comes out, covering a video on every chapter. 2 tiers available. You'll get loyalty badges, custom emojis at either tier. At the higher tier, you'll also get access to exclusive videos that I usually put up about once every month, and there's quite a bit of a backlog at this point, but mainly that is there if you would like to help support the channel. So we'll move into the video. So like I said, chapter 4, A Way Through, we are back to Sozin's point of view, but we're no longer in sort of the prologue flashback chapter. This is what Sozin is doing while Roku, is of course doing his airbending training. Roku has just returned to the Southern Air Temple. What's Sozin up to? And so straight away we find out Sozin is on a boat out at sea. And notably, it's not a Fire Nation boat. He doesn't have like an entourage expected of like the Prince of the Fire Nation. He's going on a solo mission that's not really officially on the books, and he just has 2 kind of people he kind of knows that he's formed a bit of a team around to go for like a spot of adventuring, basically. That's what's so unique about this chapter, that like I think this is the one they really should have emphasized maybe a little bit more about in the preview stuff. It's there in the Amazon preview, but I wish they had highlighted it and maybe included it with the Screen Rant one. But anyway, so yes, like I said, Sozin is on the ship. He's playing Pai Sho with his like teammates here, and we get introduced to them by name. They're both female characters. So the first one here is Dalisay. Now you'll note I mentioned this in like the opening chapter. The description here I think makes it pretty clear. Dalisay, his sister's tutor turned ex-girlfriend. So this is the character who is mentioned as having the rope dart, kind of Ember Island native, not mentioned by name in the opening chapter, but yeah, Zaysan's tutor. So she's here on the mission. Okay, interesting. She's described as, she's deciding on her move, playing Pai Sho at Sozin, talking about the advantages and disadvantages of different fluxes in steel production. So we were obviously described that she is an extraordinarily intelligent character, and so she's going on about some scientific kind of details here about steel production here, which is somewhat interesting and relevant for like the industrial future that the Fire Nation is going to have, of course, under Sozin. The final member of their team is Kozaru, who is described as a stocky and short-haired companion with burn-scarred, muscular arms, and she is a firebender. Dalisay is a non-bender who uses a rope dart. This is a firebender here in Kozaru. That's a K-O-Z-A-R-U. Once again, I'll mention the thing with Dalisay. This name is in the RPG, but it's not in the Roku era. You will find this in the Republic City book for Korra. And I believe Dalisay is one of the new airbender characters who gained airbending during harmonic convergence. She actually is the character who wants to introduce airbending into pro bending, and is doing like an exhibition match and stuff like that, and has a bit of a backstory as being the, I think she's the daughter of like basically some of the heads of the Terra Triad as well. But obviously the 2 characters, as far as we're aware, are not related, other than the fact that they share a name, because I guess these books were in production at the same time. I'm not sure how it exactly came about, but it happened twice, which is interesting. But anyway, Sozin is kind of testing Dalisay here, playing Pai Sho. He has kind of purposefully made a bad move. Notably, a terrible move with his White Lotus tile. And he's testing Dalisay to see, basically, she is extraordinarily intelligent, and so she should be good at this game. She knows how to play. Will you take advantage of my mistake and beat me? Or are you just going to treat me like the prince and let me win regardless? Like, basically, that's the test. And she takes her time and basically doesn't take advantage of the move. And overlooks Sozin's mistake. Can't even look him in the eyes. And this is where we get Sozin explaining that when he and Roku played, Roku never let him win. They always played hard-fought games. Often it would end in a draw. Notably, the last time they played, Roku actually won the game. Sozin was very aggressive, Roku was more patient, and eventually got the victory, and Sozin was quite frustrated by this. But still, it's representative of the idea of Roku is not friends with Sozin because Sozin is the prince, which is representative of most of Sozin's other relationships with other people. So he's a bit disappointed here by Dalisay, and it kind of highlights, can you ever be truly friends with someone when they can't move past the title of who he is, basically. He does know with Kozaru that she was terrible at Paisho, but at least she played him normally. Like, her loss was honest. She just isn't a good player, and is never really going to improve ultimately, because she's a little, I suppose, simple-minded in that regard. She's not going to have the crazy tactics ultimately. Anyway, so there's more details describing that Dalisay continues to talk, and we get the idea that, okay, knowing stuff about impurities, alloys, metals, fluxes is a bit of an expertise of hers, which is quite interesting. But anyway, we get Sozin reflecting on, like, my father always impressed upon me the idea of surround myself with loyal people who could serve him well in the future. And he's thinking of, like, are these the right people? He obviously thinks quite highly of Dalisay, because it's noted here that when Dalisay and Zaysan were dating, Zaysan had not been able to shut up about how brilliant Dalisay was. A girl who had risen from the servant class on Ember Island to the high position of, like, tutor to one of the heirs, basically, is interesting. But you're holding yourself back here around me. That's not great. It's explained here how he kind of came across Kozaru is actually that Kozaru defeated one of Sozin's private firebending tutors in an Agni Kai a couple of years ago, and she is a notable, powerful firebender, but again, is somewhat simple-minded. Roku apparently met her before and sums her up as, she seems like the kind of person who'd slit your throat for a silver piece and a healthy pig chicken. And yeah, Sozin agrees with this assessment of her, of like, one of them is very powerful but not maybe intelligent enough, and then one of them is extremely intelligent but maybe refuses to use it to full advantage, and is that what he wants? So I do like the characterization here, and Sozin always thinking about who are the right people to be around him. It's interesting. But anyway, right as the moves are about to continue, the boat lurches. And the idea is that they're basically here, where they want to go. Because again, like, what are they on the ship for? What's going on here? All I've told you is that it's a mission that's off the books, and we basically find out that that's what's going on here. So the captain of the ship comes down and is like, Lee, we're here. So Sozin is using the fake name Lee here. This was not official Fire Nation business. In fact, the Fire Lord had expressly denied Sozin's request to take a ship. And an interesting world-building detail here about, I suppose, what Taiso is dealing with as a leader, stretched as thin as they were these days with the Outer Island Rebellions. So that is an interesting detail, a named, like, capitalized thing, Outer Island Rebellions, obviously referring to a bunch of fire islands are rebelling against, I guess, the leadership of the capital, and this is what Taiso is trying to put down, and this is his main conflict, I guess, as Fire Lord, to stabilize the leadership of the Fire Nation. And so Sozin hasn't been allowed to do this, but he's doing it anyway, basically. This is why he has two kind of relative newcomers and not like two high up military people with him. This is why they're on this borderline pirate ship heading out here rather than an official vessel. So some interesting details there. So they head down, they're about to make their way sort of out onto the island. What's happened here is that the ship has actually stopped on the outskirts of basically this fog. Because the whole idea here is, from the back of the book, this is a fog-shrouded island. Like, the entire island, it's not just a foggy island. The island is truly covered in mist in its entirety. That, like, you wouldn't even know there was an island there unless you sailed into it. The difference here is that Sozin is aware that there is an island here. We'll find out how he knows that shortly. And so the mystery here is like, okay, we've arrived at the point where you said to go. We're not going into that spirit soup, is what it's referred to as. So they're going to take a smaller boat and head in, the three of them, Sozin, Dalase, and Kozaru. That's the whole idea here. And they're like, okay, you wait here, we'll be back. But they're like, hey, how could we trust that you won't just leave us here? And the captain's like, I need the other half of my payment to buy that villa in the capital I've had my eye on. So it's all about money here, but, you know, they're going to get it. That's the idea. So they head out on the smaller boat into the fog to try and actually get onto the island itself. And Dalase and Kozaru are kind of revealed here. They don't know a lot about this mission. Sozin refuses to tell them anything of substance. Like, I'll only tell you stuff if it's important. Kozaru guesses, is this about a dragon? Are you trying to find yourself a dragon, basically? But Sozin's like, no, basically. Dragons are not really a factor in this book. They get brought up every so often, but the implication from the book is definitely that dragons are not just everywhere. Because we're pre-dragon hunts here, of course. Sozin won't do that for another while. But also, Roku and Sozin, neither of them have a dragon at any point over the stage of this book. So that will happen later. I wonder how it happens, but we don't really cover that. But anyway... then we get the kind of idea of, like, you know, Sozin doesn't super trust them. They're relatively new to him. That's why he's not telling them anything. We then get more of the backstory of, like, why he was refused. And he talks about how, you know, Taiso, over these last few months since Roku left, has always been like, have you messaged Roku again? Has Roku responded to your messages? We need to get the Avatar on our side. Are you doing what I've asked of you, basically? And Sozin really doesn't like this, that this is all his father kind of sees him as like a friend to the Avatar. He seems to accept, though, that, like, potentially with him having left, there's maybe not a chance for, like, this Avatar to serve as a grand advisor like, you know, Zito did. Maybe things are going to be quite different, but we get a little bit into the idea of the Sozin-Taiso dynamic, that Sozin wants to prove himself to his father, but also to his nation. He wants to prove himself to be indispensable so that when he does become Fire Lord, that he'll immediately assume that role and have the respect required, that people will think of him as a ruler with ambition and ideas. What we're going to find out here is, of course, that Sozin doesn't super think very highly of his father, but is aware he has to prove himself to his father because his father is the Fire Lord. If he doesn't, his father is very quickly going to decide that Zaison should have the birthright. That sort of idea. We'll get to that point in a second. So yeah, he would have to find a way to make himself indispensable to his father and his nation, and that's what he's trying to do here with this mission, as we're going to get into here. Then we get a little bit of a kind of backstory here. So this is where the idea for his plan comes from. We get this description. When they were younger, Sozin, Yasu, and Roku would slip through the palace's secret passages and sneak into the Dragonbone catacombs underneath the High Temple. So really interesting stuff here. But then, wait, you're like, who's Yasu? Now, from context, you can figure it out. What is the unnamed character we've been referring to for all of this time? And that is Roku's twin brother. So yes, this is confirmation here. Roku's twin brother is named Yasu. And yes, the three of them would, you know, play together. It was a trio of friends. We kind of learned that here. So we get confirmation here is that, okay, at least a few years ago, the brother was still alive, and they would kind of hang out together, including sneaking into the Dragonbone catacombs, going through the restricted scrolls of the Fire Sages, stored among the bones of Sozin's ancestors. And so it's talked about here about sort of the legends within the Fire Nation, and you know, the boys were already familiar with the tales of heroic firebending masters who could breathe fire, produce blue flames, or channel lightning. But through the ancient text, they discovered even rarer firebending skills, such as the power of flight, the ability to make a distant target explode, ways to harness the power of a comet, and even a method to extend one's life indefinitely. Sozin was convinced it was possible to learn these powers. Yasu always maintained they were pure fiction. Roku, for his part, didn't care either way, just happy to tag along. I find that to be super, super interesting because over the course of this book, we will basically find out that, yes, blue fire is actually effectively a special technique. It's something you have to work towards. Azula having blue fire finally, I think, gets like concretely confirmed to be like something very unique and not just like a visual distinction of firebending. That it is something that is a bit of an art form to try and learn. Of course, we know some of the history about some of these other techniques of like what the breath of fire kind of more comes from. Lightning is an ability that, you know, historically has been around, but like lost and found again effectively over the generations. We see that the flight kind of technique is something, the reference of combustion bending is interesting. Of course, a Sozin focused chapter referencing harnessing a comet is very interesting. In addition to a certain degree with Sozin, the idea of extending one's life indefinitely and like a firebending version of that technique, because he lived to be over 100. I think it was only like 102, but still, like it's interesting. But you find out here, Sozin has always been interested in these legends, and he believes them to be true, and that these techniques are legends for a reason, and thus these are techniques I can learn if I look for them. And so here's how he goes about the path to learning these advanced techniques. This is where we find out that one thing he came across in the Dragonbone Catacombs was this Zito era scroll called The Long Road by a kind of a famous explorer called Ashu. That's A-S-H-O with the line over the top, so Ashu. A travelogue detailing Ashu's journey across the world and his encounters with a variety of exotic people. And so one of these situations is this situation where like his crew of over 200 had vanished. He follows the clues to this, dense fog in the middle of the sea. Where have we heard that before? They go into it, they plow right into a rock, arriving on this mountainous island, completely covered in fog even when they're on the island. And so here's the reveal to a certain degree about what's going on with the island, or at least the legend of this island that Sozin is here to investigate. The people who live on this island, they had never seen anyone from the outside world before. They greeted him like a king. He spent several days as their honored guest, during which time he discovered their benders had powers 1,000 times stronger than any he'd ever seen before. Waterbenders who could control the weather, airbenders who could command typhoons, earthbenders who could produce or sink islands, and firebenders who could move the sun. The chief adored Asho so much that he agreed to teach the outsider how to strengthen his firebending. That is, until he caught Ashu sleeping with his daughter. Ashu barely escaped the island with his life. And so this story is why Sozin is here. This is him following in the same paths of this adventurer, going to this island with the hope of basically getting the same thing, with the hope of learning this apparently enhanced firebending that is possible on this island that has been kept secret from the outside world for a very, very long time. How much of it is actually true in regards to the idea of like benders 1,000 times more powerful? That's usually an over-exaggeration, Avatar. When they say that word, it's just meant to mean a lot. But how realistic are those things that they say here? Waterbenders who can control the weather. Yes, that makes sense. We've basically seen that waterbenders can do that, especially with enhanced waterbending. Airbenders who can command typhoons. We know airbenders are kind of strengthened to a certain degree in a storm, especially if you're a master airbender. And so the idea of harnessing a storm is something we've seen. And if you have enhanced bending, then yeah, you have control to a certain degree over that. Earthbenders who could produce or sink islands is obviously referring to lava bending, but obviously high level lava bending to full on do that to islands. The firebending one is probably the most interesting, given that it's a Fire Nation legend. Like, what on earth does moving the sun mean? Like, that is in no way a feasible thing. But, like, what are they referring to there? Is this the idea that, like, almost like a firebending weather technique where you can make the sun shine through, like a firebender basically being able to use the, like, the Pokemon move Sunny Day, that sort of thing, or something else? It's sort of unclear there, and that's so interesting that it's the firebending one that's the real, like, huh? What do you mean by that? But anyway, we then get Sozin reflecting on him going to his father, asking to go on this mission. Like, here's the legend I heard, let me take a ship, I will investigate this. Of course, his father is immediately like, you finally heard from Roku, is that it? No. What is it? I'd like permission to take a ship. To what end? He explains it to him. I'd like to search for the island. And his father's just like, no. And he's completely disappointed in Sozin that he'd be interested in this, and just says, why not? Why not? You will not waste your time and our nation's resources chasing after some childish fantasy. Do you really believe a firebender can grow strong enough to move the sun? Sozin says, I do. And he strongly believes in it. Then you are as much of a fool as I feared. And so he is really angry at him here. It says here, the fires flared in their braziers that lined the throne room. And Tyso says, you cannot rest on your birthright alone, Sozin. It's obvious to everyone that Zaysan would make a much better leader. Unfortunately, she was not born a firebender, so the clans and sages will never follow her. But neither will you gain their true loyalty if it becomes widely known that you believe such nonsense. A nation is only as strong as its leader, therefore never speak of this again. Go invest your time studying history, philosophy, economics, the sciences, proper subjects for a future Fire Lord, and write Roku another letter. Do not come before me again without his response. And so Sozin leaves. But in his head, he immediately is thinking he had no intention of listening to his father. Instead, he would put out a word among his contacts, and basically he would make sure he gets his hands on anything that's ever been written by Ashu, the Zito era kind of author, the adventurer. And so very quickly, an ancient map makes its way into Sozin's hands, and this is what they've been using to get to the island that we've been doing in the present day of this chapter. It's noted here the handwriting matches the long road, so he knows it's true as far as he is aware. And yeah, on the map, that it's noted that this island is marked by a swirling fog on the map, so that's what they're heading into here. And yeah, he's convinced he has now found it in real life. So they basically get there, they make it to land, and immediately they just start to hear like, okay, there's stuff going on here. There's the sound of animals up ahead. And Sozin's like, follow me, be ready. Ready for what? Anything, anyone. And Dalisay is trying to figure out, is there any details in this? So she's like, there is a detail. There's something important here. And it's inhabited. That's interesting. And Sozin's like, you also know it's covered in fog. And then Dalisay's like, oh yeah, I guess there's three things. And so there's a little bit of camaraderie between the three of them here as we continue on. Of course, like, Dalisay has her rope dart kind of ready to go, effectively, if anything does go down. And Kozaru is a firebender. Sozin is carrying a sword as well with them, and like they're doing full-on adventurer stuff of like cutting their way through vines and stuff like that, the vegetation, because it's a pretty wild island, of course. Like it has people on it. We'll get confirmation of that, but you know, it's an island that is not like super heavily inhabited, of course. Then they hear more animals, of course. There's a blood-curdling howl of an animal, and they're like, oh, sounds like a hog monkey. Kozuru's like, it sounds like dinner. And Sozin does note that spirit soup is what the captain had said. Yeah, something feels inhuman about this place. He can feel this energy to this island. There is something going on here that, yeah, so the legend, something about it is real. There's no way it's all fake. So we kind of continue on basically. They make camp for the night there because like, it's been a long journey to get here. And then we cut to the next scene, which is them waking up the next day. So Kozuru wakes them up like, something's out there, boss. Something's about to happen. And this is where we get our first kind of confirmation here of people. But it's not what we expect. These are Earth Kingdom people. Now, it does say like they're in like older armor. It's not like the modern of this era Earth Kingdom armor. These are kind of like older men here, but they are earthbenders. And so Sozin is like, oh, cool. I will get to test my skills against an enhanced earthbender, because if the legends are true, the people of this island all have enhanced bending. And he's like, okay, they have older armor. I guess that could make sense. Is that what's going on here? We'll see that it's not quite the case. But anyway, the attack begins. And what we get here is Sozin faces off against one of the two earthbender like scouts. And then Dallas and Kozuru take on the other guy. And he's super excited for this. He wants to hear about this, enhanced earthbending. It even says it here. Eager to test himself against enhanced earthbending. That's the way it's referred to as here. So yeah, he gets a rock hurled at him. Initially, Sozin just slashes it with his sword to block it, and then kind of presses forward. The earthbender throws bigger and bigger rocks at him. And Sozin's kind of disappointed because, like, this is just normal earthbending. There's nothing super fancy going on here. Then we get into a bit of a kind of like drawn out fight. The earthbender gets all like earth armor, and Sozin is, the implication here is mostly doing hand to hand, minimal firebending, just trying to see kind of when is the enhanced earthbending going to come out. And then he's temporarily distracted by what Dallas and Kozuru are doing. The earthbender he's fighting takes advantages of that and nails him right in the chest with a rock attack. And so, the wind is knocked out of Sozin here. And then the earthbender goes up to him and basically like bear hugs him. He's like about to crush him with like pure strength here. And it is described here that like Sozin is in trouble here. His vision tunneled as he started to lose consciousness. But before he did, he took one last breath. And so Sozin channels what remains of his energy and lets out, it's described here, a sudden pulse of heat. The surge shattered the earthbender's armor and knocked the two of them apart. And what we find out here is that he has mortally wounded this earthbender in doing this, because the earthbender was wearing armor, and this was such a powerful pulse of heat. The armor has sort of like splintered inwards to a certain degree, creating a bunch of like puncture wounds. This earthbender is dying. They interrogate him long enough to get the idea that we're here with the Earth Kingdom. He doesn't quite get it all out, but it's clear we're here with the Earth Kingdom, as in we're not natives. We don't live here on this island, but the earthbender dies. And so we find out that this is Sozin's first ever kill. This is the first person he has ever killed directly. And it's an interesting description because, he takes a step back and it's like the relief, that he had survived came first. Then a hollow horror. It was unintentional, but it was the first life he had ever taken. And he's a bit stunned by this, of course. But then his teammates come up to him, and Kozuru, of course, is like, slaps him on the back and is like, well done. Like, look at you, killer. I just thought you were a pampered prince. I didn't know you had it in you to actually, like, kill someone. So she's, like, happy. She has more respect for Sozin now that she sees he's willing to do what needs to be done. Because I guess she would do the same. Because I guess it's not revealed in this chapter, but what we will effectively find out is that, like, yes, the team effectively kills the other earthbender as well. And I think it's the implications that maybe Kozuru does that. Dalase, though, it's noted here, she's gone pale, seeing that he has killed someone here. She wasn't impressed, but now feared him in a new way. And Sozin's just thinking to himself of like, wow, just killing one person has completely changed like both of their perceptions of me in kind of very different ways. One of them thinks I'm more respected and I'm willing to do stuff more. One thinks I'm crueler than I was before. That's interesting. Like, was killing really all it took to gain people's respect? So you can sort of see it's maybe the start of something here with Sozin, given that this is the reaction that he kind of gets from doing it. And then he's just like, oh, no match for the Prince of the Fire Nation. But this does change things. The Earth Kingdom is here. What do we do? And Kozuru, of course, not super intelligent, is like, we'll find their base and burn it to the ground. And both of them are like, no. Clearly these are scouts. They have a base here, recently formed or whatever. We can't just go in and do this because we will effectively start a war. This is a major political issue here. It's probably bad already that, like, I've killed this guy. We need to figure something out here. One interesting world building detail we get here, it says here that, at best, engaging their forces directly would surely draw the Fire Lord's attention to his unsanctioned activities. At worst, it would shatter nearly 200 years of so-called peace. So there seems to be a thing historically in the world where, okay, there's some conflicts going on, but in the last 200 years, there has effectively been mostly peace. No, I guess, giant, big level wars going on. And if you track that back, that probably does roughly refer to, like, the Qin the Conqueror incident. As like probably the last time there was a major world war style thing that has happened in the world. Because of course, we're talking about, like, Kyoshi lives to 230 years old. Because Roku's like, 16 here. We are talking about like events that happened when like Kyoshi was like in her 40s, which I think is always where we've roughly placed the Qin the Conqueror incident in her life. And because that was affecting the entire Earth Kingdom, someone taking it over, I guess that is what they are referring to here, which is a nice little connection, if that's indeed the interpretation we're meant to have. But nice that they included that, because we know directly that's in Kyoshi's life, and it's actually earlier on in her life. So we know she kept peace for a large amount of time, and that does make sense, I think, ultimately. So the decision is then made by Sozin. It would have to be done quietly. It could not be traced back to Sozin of the Fire Nation. We return to the ship. And they're both shocked that, like, you had this whole mission, we came out here, we're retreating, like, really, we're giving up, are we? But Sozin is like, no. If the path was blocked, I will find a way through. Title reference here of the chapter. Kozuru's suggestion had given him an example, an idea for what to do. The only problem was that it was going to require Sozin to do something he did not want to do. Follow his father's advice. Now, his father's advice, of course, has always been, like, you should be focusing on, like, making your relationship with Roku even better. So this is obviously the suggestion, back of the book, the description of the book. Sozin is the one to ultimately ask for Roku's aid in terms of what's happening on this island. So Sozin is going to bring the Avatar in on this, because, again, it's technically a fire island, because it's along the chain of islands that is related to the Fire Nation, of course. It is mentioned here, a number of islands along a portion of the volcanic Sibuyan, Sibuyan chain, Sozin didn't even know existed, but they're technically under Fire Nation, like, authority, I guess. So it's our island, earthbenders are here, I guess we need to bring the Avatar in on this. The question, though, is, is he going to mention that, oh yeah, we killed 2 people? I think at this point, like, reading through it again, do they confirm that they killed the other guy? Yeah. Kozuru and Dalase arrived a few moments later, Kozuru dragging a body behind her. So obviously Kozuru has killed this guy, and part of why Dalase is so pale is, oh, one of my teammates just killed a guy I was involved in the fight against, and Sozin just killed the other one. Like, I'm around killers type thing. So yeah, they've just killed 2 Earth Kingdom guards. admittedly like on their island, but like it could cause an issue. So when he contacts Roku, what will he or won't he say? Especially when it comes to like, okay, that detail. But then why is this island important to me? You know, is he going to reveal that it's about enhanced bending and the legends of this island, or something else? They are the questions that you should be asking, because Sozin, and this is the significance of having Sozin chapter in the book, is how much of a villain is he from an early age? How much does he maybe hide or keep from Roku as we begin to see his ambitions and what he needs to do to gain power kind of come out? That's what we are looking for, obviously. We see the ambition is here. Now we've seen him kill for the first time. Now, admittedly, this case, pure self-defense. Like, you cannot blame him. You can't really read any sense of, like, evil or malice into what he did here. He was fighting for his life against an earthbender who basically they attacked first. You know, that's fine. But it's almost what he takes from it is that he's very quick to get past the idea of, oh, I killed someone, and go to, oh, look at the effect killing people has on other people. That's interesting. I'll keep that in my back pocket for later. That's the difference, I think. So, fascinating chapter. This is the one that really presents like, this is what the plot is. And now we're going to go into the next chapter where effectively Roku is going to be recruited for this mission. But the question is, how does he go about doing this? Is Sozin going to appear before Roku? Is it just a letter that gets sent? We will see in the next chapter. But in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on this big chapter here that has, again, a lot to it. So it's a Sozin chapter, but we get introduced to Dalisay and Kozaru. We get mention of a bunch of stuff here in terms of like bending techniques that are considered to be kind of legendary within the Fire Nation. There's scrolls written about a lot of these things. The ancient Zito era adventurer Ashu, and of course the big thing for this book, we're going to this island. Apparently it's all about enhanced bending. The natives on this island have enhanced bending apparently, and they're crazy powerful. What is the idea here? Given that lore-wise, prior to this book, we have no foundation, particularly in the idea that there are benders who are thousands of times more powerful than other benders. Even you would say like Amon, the Yukon family, who are sort of enhanced water benders, are a step above other ones, but not by that much, to the point where we're doing those high level, like super powerful abilities. This is something different here. So what is true, what isn't true? But that's what's so interesting about the reveals that we will have when we get to the island and we explore this stuff. But yes, let me know your thoughts below. But that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.